Eddie, how you doing?
Good, Jeff. How are things going?
Oh, it's September. You know, it's amazing how quickly the sort of romantic notion of summer and how leisurely it's going to be and how long it's going to seem just evaporates and we get right back into the thick of things.
It really does.
And then this year we got the APPR on top of it, and off we go.
Yeah. And I'm sure your summer was a lot busier than mine.
Everybody's busy. Everybody's busy. So. At any rate, here we are. This is our beginning of the year meeting. I'm going to be meeting like this with everybody.
Okay.
And the idea of this is to sort of launch the year, but also to take care of some business that we have to take care of in the new APPR.
Okay.
All right. So maybe before we do anything, and I see you brought stuff like the organizer I sent you ahead of time in that email. So thank you for that. We'll use all your stuff. But I thought maybe since this is the first time for you and the first time for me to ever go through this, it would be a good idea just to sort of get a big picture and then get down to the nitty gritty.
Okay, because I wasn't sure that I brought everything you needed, so hopefully
We'll see.
we'll
Okay.
see.
So it may help. I think of the pie, that picture of the pie. We've got two small pieces of it and one big piece of a pie, APPR pie. We've got 20 points. That is the first part, the state's 20 points.
Okay.
We've got another 20 points that is a lot like it, but we've worked out the details here locally through that local achievement target process. And then we've got the other 60 points, which is about multiple measures, which is really about the work you do all year long.
Okay.
Collecting evidence about it, and then we pull out the rubric, or we have the rubric, and we look to compare your evidence to the rubric to get the 60 points.
Okay.
You know, most of the year is going to be you doing your typical work. I'll be dropping in for the mini observations. We'll schedule that one required extended observation. We'll do that. And I'm going to collect evidence, and that's a little bit different than I used to do it. Used to be I would come in and I watch your class, watch your kids, and then afterwards I give you a report that said, you know, I give you some commendations, I would identify some of the things I think that you're doing that are working really well, and I'd probably make some suggestions for things to try or to do differently. And it was really about me just sort of coming in and judging what you did. It's going to be a little bit different. We're going to learn, but it's going to be a little bit different. And what we're going to try to do is I'm going to try to collect evidence about what you and your students are doing, as bias-free, as objectively as possible, and collect all that evidence all during the year.
Okay.
You, too, are going to submit evidence all through the year about what you're doing.
So are some of the things I brought today considered evidence?
Absolutely. So well, for example, you have some data here about your kids.
Right, these are my class lists right here.
This shows you know your students. And one of the New York State teaching standards is, do you know your students? So absolutely, this is evidence. So what you might do is you might just upload this to our new system.
Okay.
And it would be evidence there. A lesson plan, or a unit plan, or a curriculum map, or newsletters to home, or attendance at something, a student work samples, all that kind of stuff might be evidence that you're going to submit anytime you want into the system. It'll get connected with the right part of the rubric, and then I'm going to be collecting evidence through my minis and through an extended and other stuff, and I'll be submitting it also to the same system, and it will all get put together so that at the end of the year, we'll compare the evidence to the rubric to get the score for the 60 points.
Okay.
All right?
And the other two pieces are what we're talking about today.
So what we have to do today, in addition to just sort of get ourselves oriented, is we really have to lock in these two 20s here now during the beginning of the year, and then we'll put them aside until the end of the year.
Okay.
All right? Okay.
All right, with that in mind, first of all, a little bit about my workload. I have 3 sections of 9th grade English. So that's the group that I've written my SLO about and my local achievement target. I have a total of 72 students. These are my class lists. You will notice one class, this 3rd section, is the smallest of the 3. This only has 18 students in it, but you will notice that 8 of those are students that have an IEP. and I'll be working with Mrs. Wagner with these students. So the other two classes are not inclusion classes. So a total of 72 students. A general observation, this early in the school year, they're some of the nicest kids I've ever taught. Just great, nice kids. I knew some of these kids already between my own children and through Little League and soccer and things like that. Some of them are brothers and sisters of people I've taught in the past. So I have a pretty good understanding of who I have in front of me. But in looking at the data, and you can see on each of these, I have their 8th grade ELA assessment score. This class as a whole, and I've had conversations with the other 9th grade teachers, is not quite as strong academically as the class that just left us. The class that we had last year, about 68% of them had 3s and 4s on the ELA the year before. This group is down around 60%. But I feel like I have hardworking, good kids, and I really think that we're going to be able to move them with some of the strategies that we're going to be using.
You mentioned the other teachers, the other 9th grade teachers.
Yes.
So you've had a chance to sort of look at everybody's data there, and
yes. At the end of last year, when you were having meetings with the different departments about these changes that were coming, we recognized the importance of maybe us working together, maybe more closely than we ever have before. And so when the 8th grade data was made available to us, we got together and we began to take a look at who were the students that we had, and we saw this trend of maybe a lower overall grade average than the year before. However, we all believe that if we work together, we've devised some things that I'll talk to you about later, that we can make a difference for these kids.
All right. So, these groups are a lot like everybody else's group, but you're worried about this one.
Yeah, my concern here is this is the only section that has the inclusion kids. And so if you just take a look at the numbers here for not only the ELA, but I'll talk a little bit more about the benchmark that we gave, it's lower. The scores are lower than
then about these students in this process of we've got to identify some things for the targets for the year. Have you sort of narrowed on anything that's particularly important with this group of kids or with our students in our district together? I mean, you've got to look at our district decision points as well. And keeping those in mind, what do you think is, everything's important, but what are the things that are extra important this year?
Well, what we decided to prioritize came out of a 9 through 12 English meeting. During the course of that meeting, we talked about in what ways can we 9th grade teachers be doing something different, or should we be doing something different as we're preparing kids for the 11th grade regions, for 12th grade and beyond. And a lot of the commonality of concern had to do with they're really not getting, or they're not doing as well with the listening portion and listening in general and understanding what if things are read out loud to them. And so we thought that maybe we could make that a focus for 9th grade, that we would be able to do some practices and some assessments along the way to strengthen their ability and their skill at doing this. And that's what we 9th grade teachers decided our SLO would be for 9th grade. It's about the listening piece. And I can show you more specifically, right? And I hope that I wrote this out in a format that's what you need. But we started with a baseline, which was not just the 8th grade scores, as you see here, but a pre-assessment. And that pre-assessment was a listening passage that we had selected from an old Regents. We selected it with the purpose not only of listening, but we noticed it was a nonfiction piece. And we are well aware of the changes you're trying to bring about, the state's trying to bring about with bringing more nonfiction into the English classroom. So we chose that reading passage and we gave 5 multiple choice questions where the students had to be able to identify main idea. We gave 2 short answer questions from the passage and they had to explain claims that the passage was making. And finally we had an on-demand writing prompt that was assessing their ability to use evidence to support a claim. So we felt like if we started with that baseline, that we could do things between then and the summative to help strengthen the kids' ability to do this task.
So working together, what do you plan?
Well, we decided that if this is going to be our focus, that we could select other passages from past Regents exams. And in conjunction of working together, and this has a lot to do with your leadership and you talking to us about the work of Rick and Becky before, professional learning communities. 2 summers ago, you were able to send 2 people from the department to a summit in Syracuse. And I was able to go to one the year before that. So you have 3 people within the department who have an understanding of the importance of collaboration, working together, common assessments. We decided that if we choose a couple of other ELA Regents listing passages, and we use them as sort of a litmus test every so often throughout the year between when the baseline was given and when the summative is going to be given, that we're giving our students a much better chance of understanding what it is they need to know, and it gives us information. The DuFours talk about what is it that we want our kids to know, how will we know if they know it, and then what do we do when they don't know it. This would give us that information.
So those, not only are you focusing on this SLO and the target for the year, you're focusing in on the same important learning content for your common interim assessments during the course of the year too. There are things you're going to do together, you're going to administer together. Have you made a schedule on which day you're going to give them and calendared them out? We
have not designated a specific day. I mean, this is dramatically different than anything we've ever done before, but we've agreed on weeks when we can do this. And what we're hoping to do is that given designated week comes, all of us make sure that listening passage is taken care of. And what we're looking for from you, and I know this might be reaching a little bit, but if you could provide us some time where we could meet together so that we could look at this data that's going to come from these assessments, that would help us tremendously in trying to specifically target areas that we know are weak.
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, absolutely. You know, we've made some adjustments to the building, the master schedule, so that all of your 9th grade ELA teachers, you're going to have a common block, short block every 4 days in common. So you've got that on a 4-day cycle. But obviously, this is going to take more time than that. One of the ways maybe that I can support you in doing this is seeing to it that in the week after a common assessment, I'll get coverage. Some will be my responsibility to find coverage for all of you for an extended block to look at the student work like you said, and then do something about plan what you're going to do based on that student work. So that'll be my responsibility, my contribution when we get that time to every week subsequent to the common assessment.
If you could do that, that I think will make a huge difference in how this is going to play out.
Okay. And invite me. I'd love to come in and sit in on one or more of these sessions to see how this works. This is exciting. This is what we're shooting for. So I'm excited about it. I hope you are too.
I am. And once we have that figured out, I'll give you the specific dates that we'll be doing this once we get closer to that.
All right. So we've got the beginning. We know where we are now. We've looked at data. You've met with your the students to whom you hand off your kids at the high school. You've got your target, you know where you're going. You've got your common interim assessment on your priority learning. I think you're in good shape.
So, summative, how we're going to end all this. We've selected another passage from the Regents. This time it's the year 2000, and it's an autobiographical piece. So again, we're trying to stay in that strain of,
all right, 6 shifts, more nonfiction.
Right. So it's a passage about blues guitarist B.B. King. This time, as this is the summative, we'll bump it up to 10 multiple choice questions, 5 short answer questions, requiring the use of specific examples in the passage, and then an essay question that will require the use of evidence to support a claim. So again, we're looking at this as not just a listening piece, but it's also a writing piece. And again, the Common Core, using the text in order to write your essay, to get your information in your essay. So we feel like we're covering a lot of what, these big shifts that are happening for us.
Okay, well, sounds good. So, and you've already collected then the baseline data for your students, and you know where they are on this at the beginning.
Yes, and those are the other columns that you see here. This first column next to the ELA score This number 3, for instance, represents getting 3 out of the 5 questions correct.
Okay.
The short answer, this 4, means they received 4 out of 4 possible points. And the 6 that you see here, they scored 6 out of 10 on the writing. All right, so these are all 72 of my students.
All right, so then what's your goal? What's your target? You did, so.
Okay, and this is where I really have to ask you for some guidance, because I'm not sure if I did this correctly. As you can see here, it says 80% of all students will achieve mastery, 85% or higher on the performance indicators. And I think my question to you is, did I set my goal too high? Is that realistic?
Well, first of all, you know that the district decision points are that we're going to focus in on mastery. So thank you, for keeping that in mind when you set this. And so then the question again is 80%. What I like about this, is the focus that you've got here. And so with all of you working together, with you now employing these common interim assessments and then making a commitment to each other to do something about it each time, I really think that you're going to move these kids on this learning content. So I think 80% to reach mastery, 4 out of 5 kids, I think that's right on. I think that's a good target. I agree with it.
Okay, well, let me further extrapolate my concern. It's this group right here.
Okay.
When you look at these scores, I think I was overly optimistic maybe, or whatever, but I'm looking at these students and I'm thinking to myself, there's a lot of ones here. And I don't know if this is a realistic goal, or if there's some way of maybe wording this differently. I'm not sure.
Well, first of all, just because a class, maybe your co-taught class or anything, doesn't necessarily mean it's different. But I see you really drilled down to look at these data. And these data show that in each case, every category, this class is lower, sometimes by 20, almost looks like 20% lower across the board on this third section, this one that you worked with Ms. Wagner on. So, maybe, not that we don't have high goals for every student, but maybe, given where they're starting, 80% isn't the right goal. I'm thinking based on the fact that everything's at least 20% lower than your other comparable groups, and you said these are comparable to everybody's in this neighborhood, right?
Right. When you meet with the other 9th grade teachers, you will see that this is very common.
So here's what I'm thinking. Let's make a separate SLO target for this group here. So we're going to keep 80% for these groups, okay, here.
Okay.
And then over here, let's adjust this to be that we're looking to see that 60% of our students of this class, 60% of the students in this class make mastery. And so then we pin, just like 80% was pinned to the 13, the middle of effective before, we'll pin the 60 to the middle of effective and then change these ranges on both sides for this class. And so there'll be sort of 2 versions.
So how does that play out at the end when it's going to be important to all of us, like the points that come out of this towards our 100. Right. How do you blend? I don't understand how those two.
Well, so what we'll do is we'll just create a ratio, and so that because there's more students, we'll factor how many of them had reached toward the 80%, how many of these have reached toward the 60% reaching mastery, and then we'll just create a mathematical ratio that will reflect the different sizes of the 2 groups.
Okay.
Yeah, that's easy. I'll take care of that part. I'll show you, but I'll take care of that part. So. We'll pin it to the middle of effective, and that'll be the 13, and then we'll just change these so on each side it changes in the corresponding manner.
Okay. So here's the next. That I don't know how well I did with this local achievement. So
okay,
all
right.
I want to run this by you.
All right, so we're good we got a plan for the first 20.
Yes.
Okay, good. So now then the second 20, remember one of the district decision points that we really want to emphasize are struggling students because we need to accelerate them up. So were you able to keep that in mind on your local part?
I was able to keep it in mind, and because this is so new to me, I'm not sure that the way I've laid this out is right. So let me give you my thinking on this.
Well, it's new to everybody.
If you look at this group, it's not just my IEP students. There are a lot of students in this group that received a 1. There's a couple of 2s, but I was thinking, can my local score come from, how many of my 1s move to a 2? And if my 2s move to a 3? So what I wrote was 80% of the students who are at 1s or at 2s moved up 1 level. Is that something that can be?
Well, I think that's right in line with the district priority of moving those kids along. So, at the end of the year, we'll just look through and see the kids who were a 1, did they become a 2, yes or no? Did the 2s become a 3, yes or no? And that can quickly give us an idea. And if 80% of this class has done that, boom, that'll be right there in the middle of effective 13.
And again, just like with my SLO, is this too lofty for me to think that 80% of these kids can?
Well, I think it's an ambitious goal, but remember, you're going to be working with Ms. Wagner and indirectly with the whole 9th grade team here on this. And so, based on this target, you're not necessarily talking about them moving from 1 to 2 on everything in the world, but on this part, on which you're focusing, you're looking for them to move to 1 to 2. I think that's a reasonable target and ambitious, but I think with those resources, I think it's the right target.
Okay.
All right.
Well, I did bring the standards with me and the rubric that will be evaluated, and I have been looking through it ever since you gave it to us last year. So if I go back to the beginning of our conversation, in the 60% that you're talking about, it sounds like there are things I'm responsible for to bring to you or to supply you with, not just you coming into my classroom, but I should be providing artifacts and things.
Yeah. So they shouldn't be contrived. They shouldn't. It shouldn't take you extra. I mean, this is going to take us all some more time here, but as much as possible, just upload things and check in, because all the evidence all year long is going to be piling up next to the rubric, sorted by element. And so when you look through it, and I will too, but when we notice there's really no evidence about your planning.
Okay.
Yet I think we all know that you're a methodical, thoughtful, deliberate planner. Make sure we get some evidence of that in there. And so you might well want to submit, like I said earlier, a quick note map or a lesson plan or a unit plan or some other notes from those common grade level meetings. What a great thing, what a great piece of evidence. Not only about your planning, but also on Standard 7, on your professionalism, to be working collaboratively with everybody else. That's great evidence.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that I...
Well, so let's just kind of wrap things up. We've got the first 20 points. We're going to use the 2 SLOs. Target for these 2 classes, different target for these.
Right.
Okay? And we've got the point structure here. Again, 13. Okay, I know 13, but that's the middle of effective. Those are the rules, so that's where we pin it.
Okay.
All right? Then for the second piece of the pie, the 20%, the local, we're going to focus in on, as is everybody in the district, on getting our lower kids accelerating back up.
Yes.
Okay,
those are the
good.
2 pieces.
And then the 60 points, the 60%, that's going to come all year long. You're going to submit evidence. I'm going to submit evidence. And then at the end of the year, we'll sit down, we'll put the evidence next to the rubric. Go.
Okay.
All right?
All right.
Okay. Questions during the year? Let's talk about it. This is new to both of us and new to everybody. And we'll keep chipping away at it. And I think it's going to work out.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff.
All right, thank you.